Hi, I am author Abby Tyler, and I'm going to be reading Chapter 9 of Runaway Cove. If you're just finding this video, go back and find Chapter 1. I'll be reading the entire book here on YouTube. It's also available at all retailers. Chapter 9 of Runaway Cove. Vicky wiped down the tables that had been vacated and spread them out again. Another matinee, another group of latecomers. As she scooted one to the corner, she recalled that Michael's boy sitting there, the very image of his father. Had Hudson ever sat in that spot? Probably. The two of them hung out at her mother's coffee shop all the time. Now it was hers. Zeke would be gone. She checked herself to make sure he wouldn't be hanging around, flashing those memorable eyes. She tapped the table. He sure had looked like his father back in the day. Cricket had done well. She insisted on the fancy latte design, but she did them fast enough that Vicky wouldn't stop her. She wasn't a control freak like that. As long as the regulars were served the way they were used to, it was a cute little add-on. Nobody would expect Vicky to do it. She had no doubt the girl would be gone inside of 2 weeks. She was too young and pretty for that fiancé of hers to let go of for long. No telling what happened. All she knew was that somebody was probably left holding the bag to a pricey reception. Vicky moved to the kitchen, ready to get a head start on putting away the dishes she'd already run through the dishwasher. But the routine was too easy and wouldn't consume her thoughts. They kept turning back to that month Hudson had moved on, and when she'd turned to Ray. She and Hudson were wild. One of those love affairs that ignites and burns hot. Everybody knew they were going to flame out. Vicky hadn't believed it. There was no way something as good as what they had would ever end. Hudson had come to work at the inn for the summer, trying to save enough money for another year of college. Then one of the haddock boats on the Cape needed a new member for their year-round crew, and he took that and stayed on. By the next summer, he had enough money to re-enroll, and he left. Even though Vicky had known all along this was the goal, it ripped her to shreds. He didn't even ask her to come with him. She had no choice in what happened. One day he was there, and the next he was not. Ray was 11 years older than her, steady and reliable. He may not have burned so hot as Hudson, but he showed up at just the right time. She needed a break from all those high emotions. Even so, she knew she got pregnant fast. She knew that the gap between Hudson and Ray had been awfully small. But when she went to the doctor, by then 10 weeks along, the numbers seemed to work. Ray had been ecstatic, 30 and ready to settle down. He was a plumber and made good money. For a girl who'd grown up in a tiny community and was expected to stay, it might be the best she could ever do. He was kind to her, a good man, the right sort of man for a lifetime. When Annabelle was born, she looked a lot like Ray, settling the matter. They both had the same chocolate brown eyes and dark head of hair. And Ricardo had come along a few years later, making a big, matching, brown-haired, brown-eyed family. There was no reason, ever, to doubt. But now, she knew better. There were no blue eyes in Ray's family, not anywhere. What had skipped Annabelle had shown up clear as day in her daughter. Vicky had something to hide. The door jingled, but before she could make her way to the curtains, her granddaughter called out, "Grandma, I saw her. She's walking way off Main Street. She's holding one bag from Amelia's shop and another one from the mini-mart." Vicky glanced at her watch. Cricket had been walking dang near 2 hours at this point. She had to be exhausted. She hadn't taken in anything but a strudel and 2 cups of coffee. When Saul was on shift, you could bet there would be no strudel at the end. Tandy parted the curtain and poked her head through. She was still wearing Cecilia's outfit. Vicky rinsed her dishcloth, and wrung it out. "Did you say hello, or just stand there and gape at her?" "I was on my bike. I didn't want to stop. That rental car she brought is still sitting by the side of the road." "Did you see which company?" Vicky could call them, she supposed. "No." It probably didn't matter. There weren't any rental car stations in Runaway Cove. Whoever owned the car would have to drive down. "How did you know where she was?" Tandy climbed on the stool by the grinder. "Amy's mom drove past and told Amy when she got home. Amy texted Cecilia. Then Cecilia texted me." Vicky chuckled. "Nothing gets past you guys. Is there any strudel left?" Vicky hung the towel on a hook to dry. "Not today. 2 in the freezer from yesterday, though." "Awesome. Apple is my favorite. Grandpa didn't share the one you brought him last night." "I should have brought you one, too." She reached out to ruffle Tandy's hair, but the girl ducked away. "Grandma, it took me an hour with the heat wand to get these beachy waves." Tandy jumped down to check her hair in the mirror over the small sink outside the employee bathroom. She was nearly a young woman. In fact, she was coming close to the age where Vicky had lost control of Tandy's mother. High school, that's where it all began. Tandy would start in the fall, but the whole town knew about Vicky's struggle, Annabelle's struggle. Currently, Vicky didn't even know where Annabelle was. She frequently typed in her daughter's name plus arrests to see if she could get a general idea of her whereabouts. The last 2 years had turned up nothing. She could only hope she wasn't dead. Jail was better. Jail meant treatment plans. One more try when she got out. Annabelle had resisted her mother's help. Thankfully, when the time came to give up Tandy, then an 18-month-old living in squalor, surrounded by a meth kitchen, Annabelle let her go. Her brother Ricardo had done it. Annabelle probably wouldn't have turned the baby over to her mother. Things had gone too far between them by then, but she still talked to her brother back then. But even he couldn't find her now. Ray made sure everything with Tandy was legal. They had hired a social worker to visit Annabelle during another prison sentence and convinced her to terminate her parental rights so they could adopt Tandy. Vicky knew she had failed Annabelle in a lot of ways, and she would not put herself in the position of failing her granddaughter. Tandy returned. "Good hair and bike riding don't mix," she said mournfully. "Nah, it's perfect." Tandy was pretty, soft around the edges, girl next door. The combination of her dark hair and pale blue eyes made her look approachable and friendly. She struggled in school and had a hard time making friends until Cecilia. Those two were thick as thieves. Tandy passed her. "I'm going to grab that strudel. Did Cricket do a good job?" Vicky followed her to the freezer. She did. She insists on making fancy designs in the steamed milk, but she kept up. She knew her stuff. Tandy opened the freezer and pulled out a plastic bin that held the strudel. "I bet you get every regular in Runaway Cove here tomorrow to take a peek at her. She might have stayed a secret last night, but by now everybody knows." Vicky had figured out as much. She hoped the girl wouldn't get too many prying questions. The regulars today had mostly been content to watch her from the tables. "It's nice they're letting Cricket stay in that cottage Cecilia's dad bought after the divorce." Tandy pulled the strudel out of the bin and bit straight into it, frozen and all. It was so buttery it kept its bread-like consistency even cold. Tandy liked it this way. Vicky put away the plastic bin. "It was sitting there empty." "Oh, he's going to rent it out." Vicky nodded. Of course he would. Real estate close to town was valuable. Cricket's situation sure was precarious. Only the locals who'd been here for generations, or who had come with money, could afford houses near the Cove. Most of the homes were rentals, and the seaside town got pretty empty come October. She and Ray had a 3-bedroom house off the highway several miles inland. There was an entire neighborhood there, many of the residents older now, but a few of the houses had been taken over by their kids. Miranda lived a couple blocks off Main Street. Kyle had a successful tech startup, and even when their marriage went belly up, He could afford the cottage that came up for sale not long after. He would need to rent it, she suspected, especially if he had gotten a place in Boston. That tiny one-bedroom near the Cove was worth 4 times Vicky's house. Georgia, the local real estate agent, constantly made comparisons. Tandy washed her hands in a sink. "I'm going to ride my bike over to Cecilia's if that's okay." "Be home by supper. I can fetch you if you don't want to bike it." Tandy kissed her grandmother's cheek. "I'll let you know, but I need the exercise if I want a hot girl summer." She squeezed her thighs. Vicky wanted to tell her she was perfect, not to worry about her thighs. But she was already walking through the curtain, the very first hint of a swish in her stride. Oh, Lord, high school was coming. I hope you enjoyed this chapter of Runaway Cove. Remember, I will continue to be putting chapters up, or you can grab the ebook off of any retailer. Thank you for being here.